the UN crime meetings?
There's four basic categories. There's the member states. They're the ones who do most of the talking. Every member state has the right to participate in most meetings. In the Commission, you have 40 member states who form the Commission. They basically rotate their membership. But many other delegations, many other countries do send delegations, and you'll find that even if you're not formally a member of the Commission, then these countries will still be making lots of statements. Then you have intergovernmental organizations. There are organizations that are formed by governments working together. Organizations like the Council of Europe, which is formed by governments. A third category is, it has a very long, complicated name, but it's basically UN entities and others. So there are various UN entities that participate in UN meetings on other areas. UNICEF, for example, that deal with children, other parts of the UN family that do come to the crime meetings, because many of the issues dealt with in Vienna on crime also impact on other parts of the UN. Institutes like HEONI, they are also part of this third category, so we are in a way privileged to be associated with these other parts of the United Nations. Then there's a fourth category, the non-governmental organizations, which are civil society organizations. There's a huge number of these organizations. Some of them have a formal status in that they are recognized by the Economic and Social Council. There is a special list that are accredited to the Economic and Social Council, and these non-governmental organizations, they have basically automatic right of participation in formal sessions of the Commission, for example, conferences of the state parties. Other NGOs, they may come and request the right to participate, and usually this will be granted. Now, this division into four categories, it does have a lot of impact, because the right to speak, the priority is given to member states. And member states have a lot to say, and meetings tend to be very short. So usually what you'll find is that the member states fill all the time. It is only if no member state wants to speak that the chairman will say, well, are there any intergovernmental organizations that want to speak? And if there are none, then are there any UN entities and others that want to speak? That's when HEONI will say, hey, Mr. Chairman, we want to speak. And then finally, at the very end, when everyone is pretty much exhausted, the chairman will see if there's time. Well, 5 minutes. Does any NGO want to say anything? I'm sorry, that's perhaps a little bit too flippant, but this is the way. So yes, there are different types of participants. Now, you asked who participates in these meetings. These are the four categories of participants, but then there's different structures that work at meetings. For example, there are the regional groupings, which are fairly important, because when you try to get a certain decision adopted, you usually try to work through your regional group. Finland, for example, would work through what's called the Western European and Others group, although more often Finland would work through the European Union, which has become very active, certainly after 1995, when crime issues, home and justice affairs became part of what the European Union was doing, and especially after the Treaty of Lisbon, when the Commission tries to coordinate the position of countries. Every morning there will be, almost every morning there will be a European coordination meeting where we basically go through what the agenda is for that day, what the different developments are. These coordination meetings are very useful because not every delegation has so many people that they can participate in the different aspects of the work of meetings, like the sessions of the Commission. You can have lots of things going on at the same time, and if Finland, for example, has a delegation of only 2 or 3 people, you cannot be in more than 2 or 3 places at any one time. So the European Union will basically have a review of what happened the previous day, what types of difficulties may be foreseen, what type of action the European Union should do. Other regional groupings like the Latin American countries, the African countries, the Asian countries, they will have these same types of coordination meetings. Then there's also the group of developing countries, which is called the G77 plus China. They are also very active in trying to coordinate their own position. Because certainly if you have the G77 plus China, which despite the number represents over 100 member states, if the G77 and China has a position, it can be very influential simply because of the weight of numbers. Then there are other players. You have the Bureau, you have the chairperson, the vice chairpersons, and the rapporteur, who are the mechanism for the meeting. They are the people who guide the discussions, report on the proceedings, etc. And the Bureau will have meetings quite often to see how things are going. Does more time have to be allotted for some discussion? Is there a necessity for having an evening session, or horrors, a night session, and how this can be arranged? In addition to the Bureau, you have an extended Bureau, which is a fairly recent innovation, where you will have not only these members of the Bureau, in other words, the chairperson, the vice chairpersons, and the rapporteur, but you will have representatives of the regional groups, which is, of course, for political reasons, very good, because then you can deal informally with the chairpersons, etc., and try to get certain sensitive issues resolved in a more smaller group, so that you do not have to fight these out in the actual meetings, where things can get very complicated and unpredictable.